You see, the grapes are already being knocked off or released. I just dropped that one over there. It's a bunch of grapes down there that have turned. I think I saw one in here. Yeah. There they are. That's the culprit. And you can knock these off into a bucket of water. I didn't think about bringing one. It's going off in the grass. Hey, good morning everyone. Kaye here on the homestead. Today in part 4 of June Garden Update, and boy, we are almost to the end of June, so I've got to get busy getting all the rest of the parts out to you. I am going to get to my tomato terraces, but since I had to come down today and take emergency measures to fight the Japanese beetle on my grapevines, I thought I would cover my erstwhile vineyard. So stick around. I'm just going to go over the metamorphosis, the growth of this vineyard over 2 years. So I have 9 vines of table grapes, and they're mixed varieties. I could look back on the place where I ordered it and find out specifically what they are, but it's a mix of white and red table grapes because I have no business getting into the wine business at my age. So I just wanted some grapes, and I thought, it's just a perfect place here because it's a slope and the sun goes over that way, so we've got this row and that row, and I just thought this is going to be great. Well, it's been more challenging than I thought, and you know, it's one of those things where you just sort of don't think about it because there's so many other things that need micromanaging. You can kind of plant them and forget about them, and but no, so that's precisely what I did. And I worried about everything else, and of course I was still putting in gardens and all of that, so that hopefully has calmed down a bit. The growth and expansion of my gardens hopefully has slowed down a bit. But what happened in a nutshell is my helper and I planted the vines in this formation in 2021. Right at the same time that we laid out the flower garden. If you just saw part 3, that was my flower garden that got laid out. The same day the skid steer scraped this area, put in topsoil, planted the vines, and what I didn't do from 21 to 22 very well, or from 22 to 23 very well, was get them into the shape so that they would grow into the two-arm method. I kind of did it a little bit, and then last year, all of a sudden I look over, I've got grapes, and I'm going, I've got to cover that. And it had mesh netting around the whole thing, which, went around the sides. And so I just bought this silk, it's almost like fabric, to cover the whole thing. I have another one, I'm going to do it again. And just cover up those grapes. Well, all of those vines, the vines just start growing. You think it's all kind of organized with the 2 arms on the stand, on the T-post, or whatever you're using for your post, and your wires. But then the vines start growing, and they got all in here. They weren't supported well. They fell down. The grapes rotted on the bottom. Yes, I was a complete failure last year. I did get a few, clusters of grapes, and I put them into my elderberry syrup. But otherwise, I didn't get grapes. You have to work on everything. So this year, I said, that's not going to happen again. But what's happened after 2 years, your grapevines have already molded. They've already got that hard bark on the main trunk. And if it's gnarly going like that, you're not going to be able to coax it back to go straight up with the two arms out. That's just not going to happen, and I tried. I thought I got it, as good as it could be, and I didn't even know if anything would make it because I cut back so many vines. But all of a sudden, I put these wires here and I started training it this year, and everything was looking good and everything was healthy, and the vines started making, they have little flowers, little clusters of flowers which turn into the grapes, and every single vine had these forming on it. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to work out after all. Oh my. So I added another, I just used whatever wire around here and my tomato clips to kind of just attach it so that they're not all just growing out on the ground and falling down. So 2 weeks ago, when my son was here, he was working on cleaning out my shop. This was all full of weeds. Oh my gosh. So many weeds, like waist high, clover, everything you can think of. With a shovel, I dug out all the big clusters, because at some point, even though they are feeding the soil, like clover feeds the soil, at some point it starts taking nutrients from the vines. And so I dug out all of the big clumps of weeds, dumped them over in the forest, and put down, I believe it was 4 bales of hay. It's really thick. I'm sort of standing on hay right now, and I already see in 2 weeks' time, I'll show you a close-up, clover and other weeds are poking through, so I'm going to have to either put more hay to suppress or pull them out. But my plan is to get on top of this Japanese beetle. Now, I noticed this 2 weeks ago, but I've been so busy and it didn't get done, and I wanted to do it this morning before the sun hit the vines. That's the best time to spray for bugs. They can fly, but they move slowly in the morning when it's cold. You can come out and brush them off into a bucket of soapy water. That's what I should do. Now, I am using a combination of Bug Brew, which is Captain Jack's, and it is certified, OMRI certified for organic gardening, as well as Monterey BT. And BT is what you use. It was already in there, so I thought, I get all the bugs. The flowers are done. They're not going to make more flowers. It takes a long time for the grapes to ripen. And so there are no pollinators on any of these vines. All that's here are bugs we don't want. And so that's why I'm spraying them. And this is very concerning. Does that mean it's something systemic making those spots, or is that just an individual bug biting in those places? And I've seen other grapes that were actually all dark. Now the sun has hit, but it's not too hot, so I'm going to finish all of this and come back and we'll wrap this up. right now, the big threat is squirrels and birds eating the grapes. So if you put netting over it and you really secured the bottom, you could solve that problem. But these bugs, I mean, I would probably have to be spraying every day. I used a gallon today and I just skimmed the surface of most of the leaves. So yeah. Obviously, this is a different pest than the skeletonized leaves, which are the Japanese beetles. I know that because I had an infestation on my cannas last year. Since it's right there with all the holes, I'm assuming that it might be, but if that's the case, I've got hundreds of them because there's so many. Look at this. I mean, these leaves are, there's virtually nothing left. Now this may be, I actually don't know. I don't know if this is Japanese beetle damage or something else, but it looks very different. It's so frustrating, you know, very frustrating. I mean, there are more chewed on leaves than not, you know, and then you get these little black marks on the stem too. Almost looks like the same mark. Did I get it in time? I don't know, because you can see on this cluster half of them have already fallen off. And they don't fall off because they're ripe. These are hard. So this has to be from pest damage. Hey, thanks so much for joining me on part 4 of my June garden update. You know, when I first started gardening, I had a series of LBLs, or late bloomer lessons, 2 of which were be vigilant and be observant. Well, I am guilty of not being either on my grapes. And to a certain extent, some of my other gardens, because I've overreached. You know, I got to this big place and I thought, oh my gosh, I can do this, and I can do that, and I can do this, and I can do that, but not without help. And this year I've had the least amount of help that I've had. So I probably will be covering these. I just have to decide, you know, exactly how I'm going to do it, because once you cover it with silk, you can't see in there and see what's going on. So I would have to have it an opening at one end and be able to go in and walk around and see, which means I need 2 8 or 9 footer T-posts and hang it over it like a circus tent to be able to walk in there. So I've got to figure that out, and you'll be the first to know when I do. So thanks so much for joining me. If building a sustainable homestead is of interest to you, please consider subscribing to my channel. Click the bell for notifications. Scroll down and click all so you won't miss anything right here on the homestead. Thanks so much for watching. Please share this with a friend, hit that like button, and find ways to support this channel below each video. Thanks so much. God bless. I'll see you next time. Well, I just turned around and I looked over at my lower garden, and since I did the update, it has, we've had all that rain, and it has exploded. All the corn is top tassel, and the sunflowers are blooming, and the corn down here is huge and full of weeds, and now it's pushing 80 degrees. I need to put in a good 10-hour day just weeding, but it's too hot. So what do? You got to get up at 4 a.m. and you got to be out here as soon as it turns light. I'm doing that tomorrow. I'm absolutely doing that tomorrow, unless it's raining.